After moving into their dream house, a Nebraska couple is dealing with a nightmare.
A home inspection gave a passing grade, but that report failed to find a major problem. Mike McKnight tells us how a new law tries to protect home buyers from costly mistakes.
After life in the fast lane of Metro Omaha, Tara Thomas and Adam Lenhart listened to their hearts. 4 months ago, the couple bought a home in Brock, Nebraska.
I wanted to have a house to live in and just live peacefully out in the country.
And with a satisfactory roof over their heads, that's according to the $425 home inspection report by Unregistered Residential.
We're sleeping easy at night, thinking that everything's okay until we get the letter from the insurance.
That said, the roof is in need of replacement, listing shingles discolored, damaged, and shrinking.
It's really confusing to have one person who says they're a professional tell us the roof is satisfactory, and then have a company that I've been with for 16 years come out and tell us, no, it's not. Yep.
But insurance made it clear they're canceling the couple's homeowner's policy. The couple has called about 10 other insurance companies, and while they wait for quotes, it's not so much the cost they worry about, but would a new insurance company pass their roof? 6 on Your Side asked John Waniger of Inspectix in Omaha to look at the roof.
20 years of age.
Remember, the first home inspector listed the condition satisfactory.
I would say it's significantly far from satisfactory. I would have put the roof at the end of its useful life and needing significant repairs.
Nebraska has a law barely a year old requiring home inspectors register and provide a certificate of insurance for $250,000. But Unregistered Residential is not registered, so the Secretary of State's licensing division notified the unregistered home inspector to cease and desist from any home inspections.
This is the first time I've heard of somebody doing the inspection that wasn't on the registration.
John Vodka of Home Standards is president of the Omaha Area Home Inspectors Association, and he supports enforcement of the registration requirement.
It at least gives the consumer the knowledge that, hey, this person has taken the time to register with the state. They are somewhat legit. They have a level of insurance, so they are protected in that way.
It shows a ton of granular loss on those shingles.
If a major problem is missed, state home inspector registration should help homeowners keep on top of it.
So they can go back to the inspector if he carries proper errors and emissions insurance to cover him from making that type of mistake.
The couple who found out too late their home inspector lacks state registration are concerned because they don't know if he carries business liability insurance so they can inspect for coverage of their claim.
I want the home inspector to either live up to his word, or I want him to replace the roof. We love this
On Your Side in Brock, Nebraska, Mike McKnight, 6 News.
Messages left for Unregistered Residential in home inspections have not been returned. Performing home inspections in Nebraska without registering with the Secretary of State is a misdemeanor that carries a maximum fine of $500.